Sonos is out with its most impressive soundbar to date, the Arc Ultra. But should you buy it, or are there better, cheaper options? Let's find out. Before we get too deep into this, if you want to keep up to date with the latest Apple news and accessories, why not consider hitting that subscribe button? So the Sonos Arc Ultra is the new flagship soundbar from the premium audio company. It doesn't replace the Sonos Arc, but it does carry a slightly higher price tag. That means the Sonos lineup now is the Ray, Beam Gen 2, Arc, and the Arc Ultra. I want to be able to answer two questions here in this review. Should you buy the Arc Ultra if you already have the Arc? And should you buy the Arc Ultra at all? I've been using the original Sonos Arc for over a year, and I was definitely curious at how the Arc Ultra would perform. Hitting the high-level specs first, the Arc Ultra is a 46-inch soundbar. It's slightly wider than the original Arc by about an inch, which looks fine on the growing size of living room TVs. It's also a little more compact too, thanks to the new sound motion technology that I'll talk about here in a few. Of course, it supports Dolby Atmos and virtual 3D surround sound. It's now a 9.1.4 channel configuration, up from the 5.0.2 of the original Arc. It comes with a power cable plus an HDMI cable for eARC connection. It's also Wi-Fi, there is Ethernet, and for the first time, it supports Bluetooth. For Apple users, you can easily cast audio via AirPlay too. It'll show up in your audio menu similar to a HomePod. Another change with this model is updated controls. The original Arc had controls placed in the center, while this new one relocated them to the back of the soundbar. For example, you have the media controls centered in the back, and the volume controls are there on the right. I really like how the new volume slider is. It's more in line with the other recent Sonos speakers if you've seen them, such as the Era 100 and Era 300. Overall, I like these design changes they've made. They're all refinements, but nothing game-changing, but they do make the device better. As many know, you can pair other speakers with the Sonos soundbars. You can use them standalone, no problem, but you can pair a pair of Sonos Era 100s or Era 300s to use as the rears. If you connected a pair of these in the back, they could dramatically improve the spatial audio and the overall sound of your system. For me, I really have no back wall, so regularly I don't use these in the back. I just ride with the soundbar itself. I did though pair a sub with it. You can pick up the Sub Mini or the new Sonos Sub 4 that was updated at the same time. The full-size Sub 4 has a few upgrades of its own, including a more powerful Wi-Fi chip for improved connectivity with the soundbar, and upgraded processors to ensure future compatibility with new features and enhancements, plus a tweaked design with this great matte finish on the exterior. When you pair a sub with the Arc Ultra, what's nice is that it frees up some of the drivers to focus on the mids and highs instead of the lower end. So you don't just get better bass, which is a given, but you just get better overall sound. Of course, by the time you've added a couple rears and a sub, your setup's getting pretty pricey. There's a large price range for Sonos sound systems, like for your living room, by going from just the Ray to adding rear speakers to bigger soundbars to adding subs, and the highest end sub can be a lot. I've invested a lot into my Sonos setups over the years, and honestly, I still prefer this two-way receiver. It's a little more modular and easier to set up. I used to do the whole receiver with in-wall wiring to get these awesome 7.1 or so setups, but after using the Arc and now the Arc Ultra, I'm so happy with the sound and happy to be done with all that extra equipment and wiring. I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there's this new sound motion technology. This is Sonos's own newer tech. They actually acquired it a few years back, but it basically allows them to have the same or better audio quality from smaller components. That's the key here. Drivers and components can be shrunk without negatively impacting audio quality. That's how we have this new, more compact design, and yet better, more precise sound. Inside, there are 15 Class D amplifiers, up from 11 in the Arc. There are 7 tweeters and 6 midwoofers from 3 tweeters and 8 midwoofers before. Getting into that audio quality, I'm very impressed. This thing sounds incredible. I am no audiophile, but I've definitely tested my share of speakers. What I was most impressed by is that I think this sounds much better when by itself than when you pair surrounds. If you're pairing those rear speakers, I think audio quality won't be as notably better from the Arc to the Arc Ultra. Those rears are going to be the same regardless, whether you have the Arc or the Arc Ultra. The ability for it to place sounds in 3D space is just so cool. There are these times when you'll be watching something and you'll hear a noise behind you or to the side and you just spin around. Like you just look because you think that it's really there. I've done this multiple times, especially recently as I was watching Jurassic Park. I don't need to be gotten by no dinosaur. It's really those ambient background noises that get you. It pulls you into the movie and it feels like the rain is falling all around you. There are more details that can come out that you may not pick up with smaller soundbars or without that spatial audio. Speaking of details coming out, Sonos has a new dialogue enhancement mode. It's called speech enhancement and it helps you hear dialogue more clearly. The best way I can describe it, this is similar to what you can do on the Arc, but you can turn the overall volume down. So if you have the Arc, turn on its version of the speech enhancement and then crank the volume a bit to get a similar effect. So it is kind of reproducible on the other ones, but I like that I can turn down the overall volume. That's the benefit here that I see. Apple actually has a really similar effect that it built into the Apple TV, but you have to have an Apple TV, and what you're watching has to use Apple's native video player. If the streaming app you're using uses its own player and interface, it won't have that dialogue boost feature. Having it on the soundbar directly gives you this dialogue feature boost no matter the source or the device. Works on your Apple TV, cable, PlayStation, anything. It works very well, and I think it's a big reason to buy the Arc Ultra versus competing soundbars. I know a few people who opted for 2 of these full-sized HomePods for spatial audio. I'll just say, not even close. The Arc Ultra is louder, with clearer dialogue and more bass, and the spatial placement isn't even comparable. HomePods are nice, but not as good as the Arc Ultra. I mean, they have like literally upward-facing drivers and sideways-facing drivers. These cannot do the same thing. So getting back to our original questions, should you upgrade to the Arc Ultra if you have the Sonos Arc? Probably not. The Arc is priced at $899, while the Arc Ultra is $999. The difference between the two is not worth dropping another grand to get that upgrade. You get Bluetooth, the improved design, better sound, better dialogue, and better spatial audio. All great, but not a big enough leap over the still exceptional Arc. If you're coming from another speaker though, I can't recommend the Sonos Arc Ultra enough as a premium solution. And I would say that it is generally worth that $100 upsell versus the regular Arc. It's so easy to set up and get going. You have a myriad of playback options from the Sonos app to AirPlay to Bluetooth to anything through your TV. The spatial audio is too cool, and I cannot go back to watching movies without it. There's such a dramatic difference going from my other TV with a Sonos Beam. The soundstage is so much bigger, it feels more cinematic. As someone who loves movies but doesn't want to deal with a piecemeal wired spatial surround setup, I cannot ask for more from the Sonos Arc Ultra. Really quick, I also want to acknowledge that there have been issues with the Sonos app. Personally, I don't use the app enough to have many of these issues, but if you're someone who really lives in the Sonos app, they may be a big problem for you. But Sonos has been working very hard to fix these, and they've been releasing updates continuously, like every 2 weeks or so, and it brought back many of the features that disappeared with their overall app redesign. But just keep an eye out on that as you move forward and as you consider which soundbar to buy. If you want to pick one up, you can find it and the Sub 4 at the link in the description. Otherwise, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video.